Have you ever observed that people tend to only pay attention to the negative or unfavorable individuals and events occurring around them? Have you ever pondered why teaching people to be and think more positively is the main focus of the entire self-help genre? Well, it appears that we have located the cunning little offender. It's been referred to as negativity bias. What is negativity bias? Let's take a closer look. This psychological phenomena explains why it can be so challenging to shake off unfavorable first impressions and why prior traumas can remain for such a long time. We are more prone to notice unfavorable aspects of interactions and recall them more clearly in the long run. This might be why positive experiences are more easily forgotten than unpleasant ones, insults are more easily forgotten than compliments, negative thoughts predominate over positive ones in your mind. When something bad happens, you react more strongly than when something good happens. For instance, you can be having a fantastic day at work when a coworker says something casually that annoys you. The remainder of the workday is spent reflecting on what he said. When someone asks you how your day was when you come home from work, you respond that it was awful even if, aside from that one bad experience, your day was actually rather pleasant. You pay considerably more attention to the negative events that occur as a result of this bias toward the negative, which makes them appear much more significant than they actually are. Here are a few instances of negative bias. Your performance review at work was generally quite favorable and commended you on your accomplishments and great performance. You started fixating on some suggestions for improvement that were made in a few helpful comments. You feel disturbed and outraged about the few negative comments, not pleased with the favorable features of your review. After a disagreement with your significant other, you find yourself dwelling on all of their shortcomings. You focus on all of their flaws instead of appreciating their positive qualities. Positive qualities are ignored while even the smallest flaws are magnified. Years ago, you embarrassed yourself in front of your pals, and you can still clearly remember it. It makes you feel embarrassed even if your pals have probably completely forgotten about it. How did negative bias originate? Why do we go through it? It is likely a result of evolution that we prefer to focus on negative things more than positive ones. Prior to recent times, being aware of harmful, dangerous, and negative risks in the world might have been the difference between life and death. People who were more aware of danger and focused on the negative things around them had a higher chance of surviving. This implied that they had a higher propensity to pass on the genes that increased their sensitivity to danger. According to this evolutionary viewpoint, one way the brain tries to keep us safe is by having a propensity to focus more on the negative than the positive. According to research, this propensity for the negative first appears in infancy. Infants under a year old tend to pay more attention to pleasant facial expressions and vocal tones, but this tendency starts to change as they become older. According to brain research, at this point, babies' brains start to react more strongly to stressful situations. This implies that a child's negative bias develops in the second half of their first year of life. Some data suggests that the bias may really begin even earlier in the course of development. According to one study, babies as young as 3 months old exhibit negative bias while forming social judgments about others. What is the brain's reaction to all of this, then? According to neuroscientific research, the brain processes negative impulses more quickly than positive ones. Event-related brain potentials, ERPs, which demonstrate the brain's reaction to particular sensory, cognitive, or motor stimuli, have been measured in studies, and it has been discovered that negative stimuli cause the brain to react more strongly than positive ones. This may be the cause of why someone could feel weary after a traumatic or stressful experience. John Cacioppo, a psychologist, used photographs of either positive, negative, or neutral imagery to display subjects in his experiments. The scientists then looked at the brain's electrical activity. The cerebral cortex responded to negative images considerably more strongly than it did to pleasant or neutral images. Poor news, bad events, and negative information tend to have a stronger influence on our behaviors and attitudes because they trigger an increase in activity in a crucial information processing area of the brain. Consequently, the negative bias still plays a major part in how our brains function, even though we may no longer need to be on high alert all the time like our earliest ancestors did in order to survive. According to research, there are many different ways that negative bias can affect how people think, act, and feel. You might notice the effects of this bias in your relationships, decision-making, and how you view others on a daily basis. The danger of loss, for instance, tends to loom larger in people's minds when they consider scenarios in which they could either win or lose a specific sum of money. Even though both outcomes are equally likely, people frequently fear the negative repercussions of the alternative more than they desire the potential rewards. The negative sensations that accompany losing $20 typically outweigh the happy ones that accompany winning $20. People also have a propensity to focus more on negative information when establishing opinions about others. For instance, research has demonstrated that when participants are given both excellent and poor adjectives to describe another person's character, they assign more weight to the negative terms when making a first impression. Therefore, how do we get past negative bias? Your mental health may suffer as a result of the negativity bias, which can also cause you to dwell on negative ideas, hurt your relationships with loved ones, and find it challenging to keep a positive attitude on life. Thankfully, there are actions you can take to alter your mindset and combat the propensity for negative thinking, such as: stop self-critical speech. Start observing the kinds of thoughts that go through your head. You can find yourself thinking things like "I shouldn't have done that" after an occurrence. This self-deprecating self-talk affects how you perceive both yourself and other people. Stopping those thoughts whenever they start would be a better strategy. Consider what you have learned and how you could use it in the future rather than dwelling on previous errors that cannot be rectified. Reframe the circumstance. How you speak to yourself about things influences how you see things, including people, situations, and events. Look for ways to recast the events in a more positive light when you catch yourself reading something negatively or only focused on the negative aspects of the circumstance. This merely entails refocusing so that you assign fair and equal weight to positive events. It does not entail dismissing prospective threats or donning rose-colored spectacles. Create new patterns. When you catch yourself ruminating, try to find a positive activity to help you get out of this downbeat frame of mind. For instance, if you catch yourself thinking about a bad experience or result, consciously strive to shift your focus and do something enjoyable instead. Here are some other suggestions to help you stop thinking negatively. Take a stroll, enjoy positive moments, listen to uplifting music, read a nice book. It is crucial to pay additional attention to happy events because it takes longer for positive experiences to be recalled. Negative experiences may be readily translated and retained in your long-term memory, whereas positive experiences require more work to have the same impact. So if something wonderful occurs, stop for a moment to really appreciate it. Play the scene over and over in your head, concentrating on the lovely emotions it brings up. We hope you learned something useful. If you did, please like the video, share it with someone you think might find it useful or helpful, and subscribe to get updates on new videos as they come out. Thanks for watching.